அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். ஆரோவில் தமிழ் மரபு மையத்தின் சார்பாக நடத்தப்படும் தமிழ் இலக்கியம் வரலாறு பண்பாடு சார்ந்த நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு உங்கள் அனைவரையும் வரவேற்பதில் மிக்க மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறோம். இந்நிகழ்ச்சியை சிறப்பிக்க வந்திருக்கும் நம் சிறப்பு விருந்தினரான தொல்லியல் துறை அறிஞர் ஆய்வாளர் திரு செங்கம் வெங்கடேசன் ஐயா அவர்களை அன்போடு வரவேற்கிறோம். தாங்கள் மேடைக்கு வந்து சிறப்பிக்குமாறு அன்போடு கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறோம். இவர்களுடன் திரு சங்கர் அவர்களையும் மேடைக்கு அழைக்கிறோம். இன்றைய நாளுக்கான கருது பொருள் தமிழர் கோயில் கட்டிடக்கலையின் வரலாறு. அறிமுக உரை வழங்கி இந்நிகழ்ச்சியை துவக்கி வைக்க செல்வி காயத்ரி அவர்களை அன்போடு மேடைக்கு அழைக்கிறோம். ஹிஸ்டரி ஆஃப் தமிழ் டெம்பிள் ஆர்கிடெக்சர்.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இன்றைக்கி நம்ம கூட சிறப்பு விருந்தினராக மேடையில் அமர்ந்திருக்கிற செங்கம் வெங்கடேசன் ஐயா அவர்களை பற்றி இன்றைக்கி நான் கொஞ்சம் நேரம் உங்களோட அறிமுக உரை தாங்களே அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு கொஞ்சம் நேரம் உட்காந்து பேசிகிட்டு இருக்கிறப்போ நிஜமாகவே பிரமிச்சு போய் உட்காந்துருந்தேன். எனக்கு ஒரு பக்கம் பத்தலை சொல்ல போனால். ஆக்சுவலாக இன்னும் அவங்க சொன்னதே கொஞ்சம் தான் நான் சொல்கிறேம்மா, நிறைய மறந்து போச்சு அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருந்தாங்க. ஸோ அவங்கள பற்றின ஒரு சின்ன அறிமுக உரை தான் இது முழுவதுமாக இல்லை. ஐயாவுக்கே இன்னும் நிறைய சொல்லாமல் விடுபட்ட விஷயங்கள்லாம் இன்னும் இருக்கிறது. அவங்க சொன்ன விஷயங்களை உங்களோட நான் இன்றைக்கி பகிர்ந்துக்கிறேன். ஐயா படித்தது பார்த்திங்கன்னா சென்னை பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் 1976ஆம் ஆண்டு எம்ஏ முடிச்சிருக்கிறாங்க. அதற்கு பிறகு 1977ஆம் ஆண்டு மத்திய அரசாங்கத்தினுடைய இந்திய தொல்லியல் ஆய்வுத்துறையில் கல்வெட்டு பிரிவில் பணிக்கு சேர்ந்திருக்கிறாங்க. 1987 பார்த்திங்கன்னா ஒரே நேரத்தில் 3 பதவி உயர்வு ஒரே நேரத்தில் கிடைச்சி கோவாவில் 3 ஆண்டுகள் பணிபுரிஞ்சிருக்கிறாங்க. அதற்கு பிறகு பல்வேறு நாடுகளில் அவங்க நிறைய நாடுகளில் வேலை பார்த்துருக்குறாங்க. போபால் மத்திய பிரதேசத்தில் 3 வருடங்கள், அதற்கு பின் பெங்களூரில் 4 வருஷம், அப்புறமா 1994 மறுபடியும் பணி உயர்வு பெற்று சூப்பரிண்டென்டிங் ஆர்கியாலஜிஸ்ட் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு பொறுப்பில் தொல்லியல் கண்காணிப்பாளர்னு சொல்லுவாங்க தமிழில். அது மூலியமாக புதுடெல்லியில் 2 வருடங்கள் வேலை பார்த்துருக்குறாங்க. திரும்பவும் புதுடெல்லியில் டைரக்டர் ஆஃப் ட்ரைனிங் விங்காக 5 இயர்ஸ் 5 வருடங்கள் டைரக்டர் ஆஃப் ட்ரைனிங் விங்ஸில் இருந்திருக்கிறாங்க. புதுசாக யாரெல்லாம் இந்த தொல்லியல் துறைக்கு வர்றாங்களோ அவங்களுக்கு பயிற்சி கொடுக்குற பொறுப்பில் 5 வருடங்கள் பணியாற்றியிருக்கிறாங்க. அதற்கு பிறகு மீண்டும் கல்வெட்டுத்துறை இயக்குனராக மைசூர்லேயும் மறுபடியும் மும்பையில் ஒரு 2 வருடங்கள் வேலை பார்த்துருக்காங்க. அந்த மும்பையில் அவங்க பார்த்த பணி எப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, இந்த சிலைகள்லாம் இருக்கு இல்லையா, கோயில் சிலைகள், அதெல்லாம் புது சிலையா இல்லை பழைய சிலைகளா அப்படின்னு பரிசோதிக்கிற வேலையில் இருந்திருக்கிறாங்க. வெளிநாட்டுக்கு பார்த்திங்கன்னா பழைய சிலைகளை ஏற்றுமதி செய்யக்கூடாது, அனுமதிக்க மாட்டாங்க. அதை ஐயா தான் சோதித்து அது புது சிலைகளா இல்லை பழைய சிலைகளான்னு பரிசோதித்து ஐயாவோட கையொப்பம் இருந்தால் மட்டும்தான் அது வெளிநாட்டுக்கு அனுமதிக்கப்படும். அப்படிப்பட்ட ஒரு பெரிய பொறுப்பில் இருந்திருக்கிறாங்க. மீண்டும் பெங்களூரில் 2 வருடங்கள் வேலை பார்த்துட்டு 2013ஆவது வருடத்தில் தன்னுடைய 60ஆவது வயதில் ஐயா ஓய்வு பெற்றிருக்கிறாங்க. அப்போ ரொம்ப அழகாக சொன்னாங்க, என்னென்னா மை ஆக்டிவ் லைஃப் ஸ்டார்டட் ஒன்லி ஆஃப்டர் த ரிட்டையர்மெண்ட் அப்படின்னு ரொம்ப அழகாக சொன்னாங்க. அவங்களோட ஆக்டிவ் லைஃபே ரிட்டையர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு அப்புறமா தான் ரொம்ப அழகாக ஆரம்பிச்சிருக்கு அப்படின்னு ஐயா மென்ஷன் பண்ணியிருந்தாங்க. ஸோ அதற்கு பின் இன்னும் பிரம்மாண்டமான வேலைகள்லாம் அவங்க பார்த்துருக்குறாங்க. கல்ச்சர் மினிஸ்ட்ரி தஞ்சாவூர், கல்ச்சர் மினிஸ்ட்ரியிலேருந்து, சென்ட்ரல் கவர்மெண்ட்டோட கல்ச்சர் மினிஸ்ட்ரியிலேருந்து தஞ்சாவூர் பண்பாட்டு மையத்தில் ஐயாவை டெப்யூட்டி டைரக்டராக நியமிச்சிருக்கிறாங்க. ஐயா ஓய்வு பெற்ற பின்பாடு. அதற்கு பிறகு பார்த்திங்கன்னா மினிஸ்ட்ரி ஆஃப் கல்ச்சர் அண்ட் டூரிசம்லேருந்து டெல்லி ஆஃபீஸில் ஐயா டைரக்டராக நியமிக்கப்பட்டு அங்கே 1 வருடம் வேலை பார்த்துருக்காங்க. அதற்கு பின் சென்னை பல்கலைக்கழகத்தினுடைய தொல்லியல் துறையில் கெஸ்ட் ஃபேக்கல்ட்டியாக 2 வருடங்கள் இருந்திருக்கிறாங்க. அதற்கு பின் 2015ஆம் ஆண்டிலிருந்து இன்றைக்கு வரைக்கும் தமிழ்நாடு அரசாங்கத்துடைய இந்து சமய அறநிலையத்துறையோட ஆலோசகராக இன்றளவும் பணியாற்றிக்கிட்டே இருக்கிறாங்க ஐயா. அவங்களோட சாதனைகள் அப்படின்னு பார்த்திங்கன்னா, புதிய கண்டுபிடிப்புகள்னு பார்க்குறப்போ 500 பழமை வாய்ந்த கல்வெட்டுகளை கண்டுபிடிச்சு தொல்லியல் துறையோட நூலில் சேர்த்துருக்குறாங்க. 1 2 இல்லை, 500 பழமை வாய்ந்த கல்வெட்டுகளை கண்டுபிடிச்சு அதோடைய தகவல்களை வந்து தொல்லியல் துறை சார்ந்த நூலில் வந்து சேர்த்துருக்குறாங்க. அதற்கு பின் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா வரலாற்று முக்கியத்துவமான கல்வெட்டுகள் சில கண்டுபிடிச்சிருக்கிறாங்க. அந்த கல்வெட்டுகள்லாம் சாதாரண கல்வெட்டுகள் கிடையாது அப்படின்னு அவங்களோட பிரம்மாண்டத்தை அவங்க சொல்கிறாங்க. தமிழ் எழுத்தோட வளர்ச்சிக்குள்ள வந்து ரொம்ப பெரிய பங்கு பெற்ற வந்து கல்வெட்டுகளை இவங்க கண்டுபிடிச்சிருக்கிறாங்க. அது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் அரசியல் முக்கியத்துவம் வாய்ந்த கல்வெட்டுகளை வந்து கண்டுபிடிச்சு அதோட தகவல்களெல்லாம் இவங்க வழங்கியிருக்கிறாங்க. பின் வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா 20 கோயில்களை வந்து முழுவதுமாக பிரித்து அதோட பழமை மாறாமல் அதே மாதிரி கட்டுறதுக்கு வந்து ஐயா ரொம்ப உறுதுணையாக இருந்திருக்கிறாங்க. எப்படின்னா சும்மா ஒரு செவர் மட்டும் பிரிச்சுட்டு கட்டுறது அந்த மாதிரி கிடையாது. ஒரு கோயிலை வந்து தரைமட்டமாக இடிச்சிட்டு அதோட பழமை மாறாமல் அதே சிறப்போடு கட்டியிருக்கிறாங்க. அது எதுக்குன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இன்னும் ஒரு 1000 வருடங்கள் அது வந்து நிலைத்து நிற்கிற மாதிரி தரத்தோடு கட்டியிருக்கிறாங்க. நாட்டோட முக்கியமான பிரச்சனையாக இருக்கின்ற பாபர் மசூதியோட இடிப்பு வழக்கில் வந்து மசூதியின் கீழ் வந்து ராமர் கோயிலோட அடித்தளம் இருக்கா இல்லையான்னு ஒரு கான்ட்ரவர்சி வந்தது இல்லையா? அப்போ வந்து அதை செக் பண்ணுறதுக்கு ஒரு 4 பேர் வந்து அந்த ஃபவுண்டேஷன் அந்த அடித்தளத்தை வந்து ஆராய்ஞ்சு நிஜமாவே அந்த ஃபவுண்டேஷன் இருக்கா அப்படின்ற ஆராய்ச்சியில் ஐயா தான் சூப்பர்வைஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கிறாங்க. ஸோ அந்த 4 பேர் என்ன பண்ணுவாங்களா, அதெல்லாம் ஆராய்ச்சி பண்ணிவிட்டு அதோட தகவல்களை ஐயாட்ட கொண்டு வந்து கொடுப்பாங்களாம். ஐயா அதை கம்பைல் பண்ணி அதை அவங்க பொறுப்பில் அவங்க கொண்டு போய் கவர்மெண்ட் கிட்ட ஒப்படைக்கிற பொறுப்பை வந்து அவங்க சிறப்பாக அது பண்ணியிருக்காங்க அந்த காலத்தில். அப்போது அதற்கப்புறமா மீண்டும் வந்து சென்ட்ரல் கவர்மெண்ட்லேருந்து எக்ஸ்பர்ட் கமிட்டி மெம்பர்லேருந்து இன்னுமே பணியாற்றிட்டு இருக்கிறாங்க. சென்ட்ரல் கவர்மெண்ட்டுடைய எக்ஸ்பர்ட் கமிட்டி மெம்பராக இன்னமும் அவங்க இருந்துட்டு இருக்கிறாங்க. ஐயா வந்து ரொம்ப பெரும் பாக்கியமாக கருதின ஒரு வாய்ப்பாக என்னன்னு சொல்கிறாங்கன்னா, இந்திரா காந்தியும் எம்ஜிஆரும் வந்து நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டில் வந்திருந்தப்போ, இந்திரா காந்தி வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டுக்கு வந்திருந்தப்போ தஞ்சை பெரிய கோயிலை வந்து சுற்றி காமிக்கிறதுக்கான வாய்ப்பு அவங்களுக்கு கிடைச்சதை வந்து ரொம்ப பெரும் பாக்கியமாக அவங்க நினைக்கிறாங்க. ஸோ 40 வருடங்களுக்கு மேலே வந்து அவங்க இந்த துறையில் பணியாற்றிட்டு இருக்கிறாங்க. இப்போ 45வது வருடத்தில் வந்து இன்னமும் வந்து ரொம்ப சிறப்பாக அவங்க இன்னமும் தன்னோட பணியை வந்து ரொம்ப ஆர்வமாக வந்து தொடர்ந்துக்கிட்டே இருக்கிறாங்க. ஸோ இன்றைக்கி நம்ம கூட எல்லாருமே அவங்களோட அனுபவத்தை பற்றியும் தமிழ் கோயில் கட்டிடக்கலையின் வரலாறு பற்றியும் நம்ம கூட பகிர்ந்துக்கிறதுக்கு இருக்கிறாங்க. இவ்வளோ பணிகளையும் முடிச்சுட்டு இன்றைக்கி திருவண்ணாமலையில் செங்கம்ங்கிற ஊரில் இருந்து அவங்களோட பணியை இன்னும் சிறப்பாக செஞ்சிட்ருக்கிறாங்க. இன்றைக்கி நம்ம கூட சேர்ந்துருக்கிறாங்க. ரொம்ப நன்றி எங்களோட இணைஞ்சிருக்கிறதுக்கு. ஸோ இப்போ வந்து ஐயா வந்து தமிழர் கோயில் கட்டிடத்தின் வரலாறு பற்றி நம்ம கூட பகிர்ந்துப்பாங்க.
Paying my perpetual obeisance to the noble souls who were responsible for founding this international center, and saluting all the assembled listeners. I am indeed feeling honored by the invitation that was extended to me by this international institute to speak about to speak about the very important aspect of religion. Temples are the manifestations of religion. So I indeed feel grateful to the organizers who have thought of inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak before you, share my views on this very important topic, that is religion and temple, which indeed governed the ancient society. In fact, all walks of life centered around religion and temple. So temples served as the center for all aspects of art, architecture, religion, fine arts, economy. It was a pivotal institution around which life in the ancient days revolved. So, as the speaker introduced about me, I served in the Archaeological Survey of India for about 38 years. And in those 38 years, I served almost in 9 states. My main duty was to discover the ancient heritage and then strive for preserving it, protecting it and preserving it, and bequeathing it to the next generation in the ancient format. This was my duty. And in Tamil Nadu, the temples, the tradition of temple building appears to be a very old practice, because the ancient Tamil adage says, Koyililla Uril Kudiyirukka Vendam. Do not inhabit a village where there is no temple. Well, this perhaps led to the construction of innumerable number of temples. In the beginning, perhaps the habitation in this land was sporadic, here and there. But with the growth, with the passage of time, habitations were established by the rulers. And each habitation, it was a dictum almost, each habitation should have a temple. Therefore, many temples were erected. Well, the temple architecture in Tamil Nadu resolves into 2 parts. The first part speaks about the temples that were erected in perishable material. And those perishable material temples did not survive to this day. Even to show one example, we are not having any temple of the very ancient period. Well, if I have to recall one temple erected in Rameswaram by Rama himself, in Ramayana we have a reference to the erection of temple. Rama, after his return from Sri Lanka, vanquishing the demon king, when he came to Rameswaram on the shores, he wanted to do the expiatory rite of having killed a Brahmana. Ravana was a Brahmana and he was killed, and Brahmahatti dosham, it was sticking on to him. Therefore, he wanted to do Shiva worship to Shiva. Therefore, a Shivalinga was made by the wet sand on the shores. And that has to be protected. And the Shivalinga, and then Hanuman was sent to fetch something from the Himalayas, and by that time the puja has to be performed. So he performed the puja, and then to protect the Shivalinga from the vagaries of nature, we can understand on the seashore, high wind or the climatic vagaries. So what he did, he protected the Shivalinga with a thatched roof, because in that region, palmyra trees, palm trees are many. So easily available material was the palmyra tree. That palmyra leaves were brought and a thatched shed was erected to protect the Shivalinga, which was worshipped by Rama. Even today in the Rameswaram temple, beneath the central shrine, just below the central shrine, they say that there is a chamber, And that Shivlinga which was made by Rama for worship, offering worship, is still in existence. It is there. This is what is the story of the primitive temples in Tamil Nadu. Even during the Sangam age, we have references. Sangam age is the glorious literary period. The time bracket is around 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD. That was the time bracket given for Sangam age. Even during that age, in the literature, in many Sangam literature, we have enormous references about the existence of temples. But none of the temples have survived to this day to show that this is how the temples were there during the primitive time or during the glorious literary period. They have not survived because of the use of perishable material. Well, a transition was introduced. A transition was heralded by the Pallava king during the Pallava age, that is, say, from 600 AD onwards. 600 AD is an important landmark in the world history. Many new discoveries were made. Many in the world scenario I am speaking, and in Tamil Nadu particularly, a very important transition takes place. And the author of the transition called himself as Vichitrachitta. That means the creator of wonder. A wonder was indeed created in the beginning of the 7th century AD. It was created by none other than the first Pallava king, imperial Pallava king, Mahendravarman I. His time bracket was, he ruled from 600 AD to 632 AD. That was the time bracket in which he ruled this land. We are unable to understand what is the curiosity of his mind to herald this transition of erecting temples from the perishable medium to the permanent medium. It was he who introduced a temple architecture which was not there in this land prior to him. But that type of temples were there all over India. We are having that type of temples existed in the other parts of India. But here this was introduced. What he introduced? He introduced the excavation of the living rock. Solid living rocks were used for excavating and then making a cave-like. And interior of the cave, he embellished it with halls, verandas, and then supported by pillars. The pillars were not having functional value. They were not supporting the rock above. But to embellish the interior of the temple that he excavated, he made chambers for the presiding deity, and then the other components of a temple, that is the sanctum sanctorum, then Ardhamantapa, then Mahamantapa, likewise. And this is how living rocks were carefully scooped out, and the cave that he created was finished to accommodate the deities that were offered worship or worshipped in the temple. This is how the transition takes place, and a solid transition. A transition which survives even today, and it will survive for many centuries to come. So, I am happy that such a temple was first ever temple was attempted in a region very near to this place, near Jinji. There is a place called Mandagapattu. There is a place. From Jinji to Vilupuram when we go, there is a place called Mandagapattu. There is a big rock solid granite rock is there. And perhaps he chose that rock to herald this transition of creating a temple, of excavation. He excavated the rock in the form of a cave. So we call such temples as cave temples, otherwise rock-cut temples. Many of you might have visited the Ajanta, Ellora and other such places where we have such magnificent temples erected much earlier than this rock-cut temple. This rock-cut temple we consider as the first ever attempt to herald this transition. Why? Because after excavating the temple, he engraved one inscription on the facade of the rock, that is, on the footsteps in which we walk, we climb and then go to the temple. When we go to the temple, on the facade, on the right side of it, in the open rock, he has engraved an inscription which reads like this: Yedat tanishtagam madrumam aloham vichitra chittena nirmapidam nirpena Brahmeshwara Vishnu Lakshitayatanam. This is the only inscription which he has written. Yetat Anishtakam. This is my creation or order. I am telling to this world. Anishtakam. Ishtakam means brick. Ishtaka. Even in Kannada, Itige. Even today in Kannada it is said Itige means brick. Ishtakam is the Sanskrit word. If we add to the Ishtaka, it will give negative meaning. That means no. For any Sanskrit word, if we prefix the syllable a, it will give negative meaning. So Anishtakam means no brick, without brick. Adrumam, drumam is wood. So without wood. Aloham, without this, uloham means metal. Aloham, without metal. Asudam, without this lime mortar. Sudam. Vichitra chittena nirmapitam. I am Vichitra chitta and I have created this wonder. I have excavated this solid rock in the form of a mandapa, and that is how the village is also called Mandagapattu. Mandagam, in those days it was like a mandapa, so it was called Mandagapattu. So I have created this wonder and I am a Vichitra chitta. I have created this as a wonder, and in those days, imagine, it would have been a much very laborious and costly enterprise. How much he must have toiled, his this stone cutters, how much they might have toiled to cut the living rock and create a wonder. From outside, if you see, it is a rock, a shapeless, barren rock. But if you go nearer and go to the temple, nearer to the temple, you will find that it was a fine architectural wonder created in those days. 606 to 632 is the time bracket, and in his region, in his reign period of about 32 years, he created this wonder. So from a perishable medium of temples that were there, and those temples have vanished, and here is a transition, a sudden transition, and that transition became a permanent transition, and he was the author of it, and therefore he is calling Vichitra chitta. And no wonder, it is not an exaggeration. He deserves the claim that he was a wonder creator, and that is how the temple exists. It is existing even today. It is a protected monument of the central government archaeological department. We are protecting it. So that is how the transition was heralded. And his was a vast empire stretching from the river Pennar in North Pennar in Andhra up to Kaveri. This was a vast empire. And everywhere temples are to be created, and there was no scope of doing such temples in all villages because there may not be rocks, and even if there are rocks, it may not be a viable enterprise because he cannot make such attempts everywhere because it is a laborious and costly enterprise. Therefore, perhaps he did not do it. But then, about 20-25 such temples he created in many parts of his empire. About his own creations, he expresses his feeling after the finishing of the temple, after bringing it into worship, after consecration. He used to wonder about the creation that he made. In Mandagapattu, he calls himself as Vichitrachitta. And at Mahendravadi, there is a place called Mahendravadi, it is nearer to Arakonam, where he created such a wonderful temple for Lord Vishnu. Here it is for Trinity, Brahma, Ishvara, Vishnu. Lakshita Ayatanam. Ayatanam means temple, and Lakshita was his one of the titles which he had. Therefore, he created it in his he named it after one of his own titles. And here in Mahendravadi, he created a temple like that, and he himself was wondering, and he was telling that it is so pleasant to the eyes of all the public, all people. Jananayana Abhirama. He is writing on the inscription. In the inscription, he writes that I have created this temple, which is so beautiful. And how beautiful it is so pleasant to the eyes of all the public. Jananayana Abhirama. Abhirama, Rama means beautiful. Rama simply means beautiful. Abhirama, more beautiful. So, for what more beautiful? To the pleasing eyes. Jana Nayana. Nayana means Karn. So, Jananayana Abhirama, Gunadama Mahendrapure, Mahadi Mahendra, Vishnu Griham Nama, Murari Griham. I have created this Vishnu Griham for Murari, one form of Lord Vishnu. Likewise, in Tiruchirappalli, on the hillock, the Archaeological Survey of India protects 2 rock-cut temples created by Mahendravarman. And in one rock-cut temple, there is a beautiful inscription in which Parvati is recorded to have been. It is stated that Parvati, having become angry with Lord Shiva, she was living in that, Shiva and Parvati were living in that hill, in that temple which was created by Mahendravarman, because 2 temples for Lord Shiva is there. So, the temple was facing the river Kaveri. And it is written in the inscription that Parvati became annoyed with Lord Shiva because he is looking at Kaveri. Yeah, he is looking at Kaveri, the beauty of Kaveri. Already he is having Ganga on his head. And this fellow, he may forget me. So, in a fit of rage, it is written in the inscription that the Devi Parvati went to Himalayas. This is how the beauty and the nature of the temples that he created, he is writing. It is not only pleasant to the eyes, it has become envy even to Parvati because it is such a location. This is what is emphasized in the temples that were created. Well, this is one stage. After Mahendravarman, his son Narasimhavarman comes to power, he rules for about 45 years. So what happens after 630, for 45 years up to 75 years he rules. He was another innovator. If Mahendravarman was to be called as the innovator, because he is indeed an innovator, and Narasimhavarman was indeed another innovator, he continued the tradition of the temple building exercise which was followed by his father. Then he propounded or he invented some other type of temple building. If Mahendravarman has scooped out the living rock like a mandapa or like a cave, Narasimhavarman, he was the pioneer for the models of temples that we are having. He sculpted out the unwanted rock material and created temple-like forms. The temple forms that we are seeing today were all experimented by Narasimhavarman by removing the unwanted rock mass and then creating the shape of a Vimana. And that example we see in Mahabalipuram. The modern name, the appellation given is 5 Rathas. Anything which is 5 is naturally attributed to the 5 Pandava brothers. And that is how the 5 Rathas have no connotation with Mahabharata. It is only 5 temples 5 shrines that were experimented by another method of erecting temples. The 5 Rathas in the form of the Dravida Vimana, pyramidal Vimana, and then for the reclining Vishnu, it is the wagon vault Vimana, and then for the Nagula Sagadeva Ratha, it is the apsidal temple, just like the elephant which is lying, and its back will look like a semicircle. And then the hut type of temple that is now famous in Kerala. Actually, it appears in Mahabalipuram. Narasimhavarman wanted to experiment all the 3 types of temples that were existing during his time in the various parts of India. In South India, it is the Dravida model. What is a Dravida model? A shrine or a Vimana which is in the pyramidal form, diminishing profile, and either square or octagonal or rectangular. That way, this is what is the general shape of a Dravida Vimana. And what is the Nagara Vimana? Nagara Vimanas are in North India. All the North Indian temples will have a superstructure above the Garbhagriha, that is Sanctum Sanctorum, which is called Vimana, and that will be in the form of a curvilinear form. It will not be in the diminishing profile or pyramidal in profile. It will be curvilinear. Its 4 corners will be like a curve. So curvilinear form. Unfortunately, I did not bring my slide. Otherwise, I could have, with the slide show, I could have done it. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Yeah, certainly. Whenever opportunity comes, I will bring and show what are the forms of Vimanas. And what is a Vimana? Now we call Vimana means the superstructure which is above the Garbhagriha. Garbhagriha, what is in the front, it is Gopura. And what is the superstructure that exists above the Garbhagriha, that is Sanctum Sanctorum, is Vimana. And according to the Maya Mata and Manasara, which are texts for the temple architecture, which are the canonical texts for temple architecture. According to Mayamata and Manasara, the Vimana includes even the lowermost part of the temple. Upanadi stupi paryantam vimanam. This is the definition given in the text, canonical text, Agama text. Now, our understanding is the Vimana portion means it is the pyramidal Vimana which is rising over the central shrine. That is not the canonical definition. So Vimana, North Indian Vimana is curvilinear in shape. Dravida Vimana is pyramidal in shape. And Vesara Vimana will be like a semicircle on the back side of it, because it is generally believed that a reclining elephant's back is to be copied for erecting temple. That means, that is, if that plan of the temple is in the form of a Gajaprashtam, it is called. That means Gaja is elephant and it is lying, reclining or lying. So that is the form of the temple. There also from the Upana to the pinnacle, Upanadi Stupi Paryantam, it will be of the same plan. That is the plan of the temples. So this is how temples were erected. First perishable material, then a permanent medium of living rock was used to scoop out and embellish in the form of a temple. Enshrine the deities that were offered worship in the temple. This is one thing. The second, again the transition is the removal of the unwanted mass of rock and then creating the form of temples. Exterior, the embellishment now is in the exterior, while the embellishment in the first transition, it was interior. Now the embellishment is in the exterior. Narasimhavarman also used the living rock, the facade of the living rock as a canvas for sculpting out relief sculptures portraying some Puranic themes. Once again in Mahabalipuram, that Arjuna's penance, it is called Arjuna's penance, which is also datable to Narasimhavarman. There, another introduction he is doing. In the first introduction, it was the temple, it was the presiding deities, worship was offered. In the second transition, temples were erected in a different model. The third transition is that in the temples now what all over the country we are seeing, that the small miniature sculptures illustrating various episodes from Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavata Purana, etc. Many panels we are seeing, in many temples we are seeing. In Karnataka, at a place called Pattadakal, you will see the epic narration in the pillars, all narrations, all important episodes of Mahabharata, Ramayana are carved in the pillars. So here, the transition, the origin to be attributed to Mahabalipuram, the canvas that Narasimhavarman used, that is Arjuna's penance. The story behind the panel of sculptures, the story, one interpretation is that it is the Arjuna's penance. Arjuna did penance for what purpose? To obtain the boon from Lord Shiva, that is the Pasupadastra, which was to be used in the Mahabharata war. So that is one interpretation, because the sage Arjuna, the Arjuna is doing penance in one leg, standing in one leg. and Lord Shiva is bestowing the boon of giving the Pasupada Astra, that is the Trishul he is giving. So this is one interpretation. The other interpretation is Bhagirath did penance for bringing the celestial river Ganges from the celestial height Brahmaloka to the world, to our world, because there was to be their purpose to be served, to give attainment, to attain moksha to the ancestors. That was the story. But that was not graphically portrayed, because in the other temples, especially in Karnataka temples, the Trivikrama Avadara is graphically portrayed, where 1 feet is, Lord Vishnu's 1 feet is measuring the whole world, it has measured. The second feet goes up to the Brahmaloka, and the third, we are not having any illustration. The second one, we are having illustration in Badami, in cave number 3, where it touches the Brahmaloka. When Brahma comes to know about the feet of his father, Lord Vishnu has come to the Brahmaloka, he offered oblations. The water poured was so much to do that Pada Puja, the water ran like a river, and that is considered to be the holy Ganges, the celestial river, and that has the potency of giving salvation to the departed souls. And indeed, Bhagirath was advised to bring it to give salvation to his ancestors who were burnt to ashes, and that was the purpose. And here in Mahabalipuram, this episode is also interpreted because of the cleft in 2 rocks, the central cleft, and from the Netherland, the emergence of the serpent and other water body living beings. So this is 2 separate interpretations. For the portrayal of various episodes in the epics, Puranas, that we find in our modern temples, that appears to be the inspiration. There comes the inspiration. So this is another thing. Well, once again, another transition takes place. What is that transition? I have told in the beginning that there is a dictum that we have to inhabit a place where there is temple. And if there is no temple, that place becomes unfit for habitation. So this type of enterprise, this type of temple construction cannot be replicated all over the empire. And everywhere they have to cater to the needs of religious worship, and they have to build temples. And here again, another transition comes. What is that transition? That transition is the transition of quarrying the stone from the rock, transporting them to the temple site, then erecting structural temples from the rock-cut cave temple, and from the transition of the creating temples models of removing the unwanted mass rock. Here another transition takes place, that is the transition of erecting temples with the quarried stones, block of stones, bring them to the temple site and erect temples. That type of temples are now seen all over our land, Tamil country. Now, that transition was introduced by Rajasimhan, Narasimhavarman II or Rajasimhan. So it was in the beginning of the 8th century. So temples were started, construction of temples started like this. The first temple we consider as, that is archaeological officers, archaeological department, they consider that the shore temple at Mahabalipuram appears to be the first ever attempt to build a temple of stones in the shape created by Narasimhavarman. That is the Ratha model, 5 Rathas that we say. In that model, he created temples, he constructed temples. And the temples are in the form of Dravida style. And the second temple, which we consider as the temple that was constructed as per the Agamic traditions, accommodating all the Parivara Devatas. There are Parivara Devatas. They are to be accommodated in the periphery of the temple complex. And that we consider that Kailasanatha temple at Kanchipuram is the earliest temple constructed as per the Agamic tradition. So this is how, and during Rajasimhan period, many such temples were constructed. And here near Panaimalai, here nearer to this place, one such temple exists. And in all the temples that they constructed, the temples were richly decorated by painting, by sculptures, by artistic works. They were all the abode of fine arts, religion, art, architecture. For all, the temples were the real abode. If we want to see or speak about the glory of Tamil architecture or temple architecture, we have to now look at the temples only, because somehow their palaces in which they might have lived, the Pallava kings or the Chola kings, Pandya kings, or Vijayanagara kings for that matter. Vijayanagara kings, they lived in Hampi, and Hampi was indeed, it was ruined, and the ruins only are now excavated and the plans are now studied. We have to look only at the temples because they are the surviving examples of those period. So this is how the origin and development of temple architecture came here in Tamil Nadu. Now, this is about the temple origin and architecture and then growth. After the disappearance of the Pallavas from the scene, the successors were the Cholas. Here on the north of Kaveri, and then down south it was the Pandyas. They faithfully followed the tradition that were followed by the Pallavas and then the early Pandyas in that land. Temples were constructed of smaller dimension. The architectural motifs, the embellishments, the profiles that they accommodated in the construction of the temple, they all were faithfully followed in the early temples that the Pandyas or the Cholas constructed in the territories, in their territories, respective territories. In this form, we are having many temples which are now considered as monuments by the Archaeological Survey of India, and they are protected. And they are protected in their pristine purity. We are not allowing any change in the temple architecture, temples, either in the construction material or in their form or in any aspect. That is, now we are actually fighting with the society that the people, they come and they say, why you are keeping this temple like this? We can demolish it and we can construct new temple like that. But we are not allowing, because we have a mandate to give it to the next generation to show that we have to first understand that what is the temple architecture in those days. And then the next generation should know how temples were erected in those days. The temples actually, besides serving as the abode of the deities and the place of offering worship, obtaining boons from the deities, now they serve another role. What is that role? The role is that they are the historical relics, historical evidences. Now, if I want to speak about the Pallava architecture, I have to quote the Mahabalipuram example, I have to quote the Mandagapattu example, I have to quote the Panimalai example. And this is the heritage. We have to protect the heritage, and that is the mandate of the Archaeological Survey of India, and that is how we are protecting it. Now, having said all this, I would now pass on to the another transition, a transition which has touched the meridian. The highest watermark was achieved by the Chola Emperor, Rajaraja Chola, the first. In fact, Mother Meenakshi Ammal requested me to speak about Tanjavur temple, and enanga madam? Illa venda, no problem. I am okay. Well, this is how the transition takes place and the development takes place, and the development has touched the highest watermark, the meridian it has touched. I am sure most of you might have visited Tanjavur and seen the temple. If not, at least in the photograph you must have seen. I have to speak about Tanjavur, about the Tanjavur temple on two counts. One is the creator and the creation. The creator was Rajaraja Chola, son of Sundara Chola and Vanavan Mahadevi. His time bracket, he ruled from 985 to 1014 AD. That is the 29 years he ruled. And during his 29 years rule, practically he conquered the entire South India and the islands in the Indian Bay of Bengal and other places. His was a vast empire, and it was a rich empire. Perhaps in those days, the richest empire in those days. Well, about Rajaraja, I said I will speak. And then about his creation. Rajaraja was a born orphan. Will you believe this? He was orphaned even when he was a baby. His parents were not there. After giving birth to the child, the child mother entered into the funeral pyre, committed sati. Sundara Chola, the father, died at Kanchipuram. Ponmaligai Tunjina Devar. That was the name given to him after the death of Sundara Chola. In a palace conspiracy or in an act of retrieving the lost territories to the Rashtrakutas, Sundara Chola lost his life at Kanchipuram. Ponmaligai Tunjina Devar. Ponmaligai is the golden palace. Tunjina slept. Devar, he became deity, God. So that is how the inscriptions refer to him. The post Sundara Chola inscriptions, when it has to make a reference about Sundara Chola, they refer as the Ponmaligai Tunjina Devar. So he died. On hearing that news, Vanavan Mahadevi, his most devoted queen, committed sati probably at Tirukoilur. Probably. It is only because we have a stone, Kabilar Kal, where sati is, in those days, sati was committed. Because the Veerataneshwara temple on the banks of the river Pennar, it is a very important temple built during the Pallava period and dedicated to Lord Shiva in one of his 8 Veeratanams, Ashtaveeratanam, 8 Veeratanas. There, that is another Veeratanam. There in the north wall, that Adhisthana, plinth portion, an inscription is engraved of Rajaraja, where the eulogy portion records this detail. முலை மகப் பிரிந்து முழங்கு எறி நடுவனும் தலைமகள் பிரியா தையல். This is how it speaks about the sati that Vanavan Mahadevi committed. The baby was suckling the milk of the mother, and she has just thrown the baby and then entered into the funeral pyre. And this is still graphically eulogized in the Tiruvalangadu copper plate charter of Rajendra Chola. There it is mentioned that on hearing this news of the death of Sundara Chola, the devoted queen Vanavan Mahadevi, she committed sati with the thought in her mind that Sundara was so beautiful, and when a person dies, it is believed that he will be taken to the heavens by damsels, angels. And even before they descend and take him to the heaven, and in that course, they may fall in love with Sundara Chola. That is, he is so beautiful. I, the devoted Vanavan Mahadevi, would like to be with him even in the nether world. And she actually committed sati just immediately after the demise of Sundara Chola. That means it is described in the copper plate that she committed sati just like the night follows the day. Immediately after the day is over, night falls. So in such a way. And the reason the composer of the copper plate quotes is that he was so beautiful, and the angels may covet him, and even before they covet, I would like to be with him. This is how it is described. So it is a fact that why I am emphasizing all this is that Rajaraja was orphaned even when he was a baby. Well, the responsibility of bringing him up, grooming him to shoulder the burden of the Chola Empire was given to his own paternal aunt Sembiyan Mahadevi and his own elder sister, Rajaraja's elder sister Kundavai. These two noble ladies, they have taken the care of bringing him up, grooming him to shoulder the responsibility. He was indeed a born king, because in the copper plate charters and also in the stone inscriptions, once again the Tiruvalangadu copper plate I will quote, that people, citizens of the Chola Empire, regarded the baby that was born as the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, because the copper plate says that on both of his palms he bears the auspicious mark Sankha and Chakra. So people regarded him as the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And then another description about Rajaraja in the same copper plate says that the Naga princes who were living in the nether world, they started dancing out of ecstasy, because the copper plate says that Lord Vishnu has taken birth as Rajaraja. Now the burden of bearing the load of the earth by Nagaraja will be relieved of the burden of bearing the load of the earth, because Lord Emperor, the baby Rajaraja will now grow as an emperor, and he will bear the load of the emperor, this earth. So they started dancing out of ecstasy. This is quoted in the inscriptions. And then there is another inscription at Then Mahadevamangalam, Parvadamalai, half of the mountain, there is a natural cave in which there is an inscription recorded that Lord Rajaraja was Lord Vishnu himself in many of his aspects. Just as Lord Vishnu measured the whole world in 3 feet, Rajaraja will also measure the whole world. And indeed, Rajaraja was also named as Ulagalandan. In his inscriptions, he is recorded as Ulagalandan because he measured the whole land, and the taxation, which was a burden, he reduced according to the merit of the land. So, Ulagalandan. So, this is how Rajaraja was considered. He was, the responsibility of bringing him up was given to his two noble, I have told, two noble ladies of the Chola family. At the age of 14, it is considered that at the age of 14, as per the will of the citizens, Rajaraja was coronated as king. The affectionate name which his parents gave when he was a child was Arunmozhi Varman, not Rajaraja. And it was the Abhisheka name, that means the coronation name, when he was coronated at Chidambaram, because just like Pattadakal in Karnataka, Chidambaram was the coronation seat for the Cholas. Therefore, the Chalukyas, it is the coronation seat in Pattadakal. Here, it is Chidambaram. After the king, after the boy Rajaraja was crowned as king, he was named Rajaraja. What is Rajaraja? Rajaraja was the name of Indra. And in the inscriptions, it is again recorded that Indra became envy of Rajaraja's empire because it is so rich. Indra himself came down and sat in the Tanjavur temple, facing the temple Vimana. Normally in a Shiva temple, the place for Indra is at the Shikara, at the Vimana, facing the east. But here he is facing the west because he is looking at the Vimana which he created, that which Rajaraja built. Well, this is how. This is something about Rajaraja. Rajaraja, after becoming king, he, in his prashastis, that means eulogy portion of his inscriptions, it is written that he conquered many lands. The first land starts with Gangapadi. Gangapadiyum, Dadigai-padiyum, Nulamba-padiyum, Kudamalai Nadum, Kollamum, Kalingamum, Munnir Padandivu, Pannir Ayiramum. So he enumerates all the lands that he conquered. Well, when I was posted in the temple survey project in Madras, I was given a project to survey the Chola temples in Karnataka. Indeed, it is not an empty boast which he writes in his prashastis. Rajaraja, he writes that he conquered all the territories. It was a fact, it was indeed a fact that he conquered and he built up temples there. I have discovered about 125 temples built by the Cholas in Karnataka. I have myself discovered, and in my project report I have written in detail about those temples and about the inscriptions. Rajaraja simply did not remain with the construction of temples. He endowed liberally to the temples all gifts he made, and in the beginning of the conquest, in the beginning years of his conquest, he put up his inscriptions in Kannada language and Kannada script. And as the years passed, he introduced Tamil as the inscriptional language, and Tamil became the official language in the territories that he has mentioned. Gangapadi, that is the territory of Gangas. Nulambapadi, Nulamba's territory. Dadigai-padi, another territory, that is beyond that Krishna river. Then Kudamalai Nadu, that is the Coorg district where river Kaveri originates. In those places we are having the inscriptions of Rajaraja. In the beginning it is in Kannada and Kannada language, later on it is in Tamil and Tamil language. Tamil script and Tamil language. Royal temples were erected at a place called Thadimalingi. You may wonder that if you visit the temple, you may forget, you may wonder that are you in Tamil Nadu or in Karnataka? Such a way. And in a place called Malur Patna, his own queen was present at the time of consecration of the temple because it is all written there. So such is the very important king. He conquered all the lands in Andhra up to Orissa. And in Sri Lanka was part of Chola Empire. We are having Rajaraja's temples there, Rajaraja's inscriptions are there. Well, this is how. And now about the Brihadishwara temple. Brihad Ishwara. It is not a Sanskrit word, it is a Marathi word because the last rulers of Tanjavur were Marathas. And Brihan Mumbai Corporation, Brihad is that Marathi word. It is also a form of Sanskrit word. Brihad Ishwara. That is not the name which the builder gave to the temple. Well, before the temple, before the world came to know about the author of the temple, that is the person who constructed the temple, the king who constructed the temple, the world was believing that the temple was such a big enterprise, laborious enterprise, costly enterprise, because stones are not available anywhere near in that area. Because it is a delta land, Kaveri Delta, stones are still available only about 100 kilometers away from Tanjavur. So, stones were quarried, transported in a marshy land. It was a delta land. Transported, and a temple was erected. The temple was erected, temple was consecrated in his 25th regnal year, that is 1010 AD. In 1010 AD, the temple was consecrated or thrown open for worship. And it is believed that it took about 10 years to complete, because we are not having any solid evidence to show, to say when the construction started, when, at least for the consecration, we are having an inscription engraved in the temple that on the 275th day of his 25th regnal year, King Rajaraja gave the copper pot for taking the water to the pinnacle and to pour and then throw open the temple for worship. This is recorded. Therefore, I am vouchsafing the date of consecration. When the construction started, we are not, it is only a speculation. And archaeologists, as an archaeologist, we are not supposed to speculate. Speculation is allowed to only a minimum extent, and if there is some supportive evidence, but we are not having. But then it is believed that it is a victory temple, it is a commemorative temple. The temple at Tanjavur is a commemorative temple. What is commemorative? What is the event that was commemorated? Perhaps the defeat of Satyashraya, that is the Kalyani Chalukyan king. After Kalyani Chalukyan king was defeated, his treasury was looted and brought, and it is recorded that Rajaraja utilized the gold which was brought from Satyashraya. Satyashrayanai yerindu kodu vanda dravyangalil. He makes offering to the various deities, or he is erecting certain portions of the temple. Perhaps it is believed, since the other parts are commemorative in nature, we believe that the main temple itself was a commemorative temple. But don't take my words as authentic, because I am also speculating to the extent that I am permitted to speculate. Now, having said this, there are two main structures in the temple that are commemorative in nature. The first entrance gopura, from where you are entering, the entrance gopura is named as Keralantakan Tiruvasal. It is written on the entrance gopura, Keralantakan Tiruvasal. It is the holy entrance to the temple, Kerala Antakan. Rajaraja was the Antaka, that is the god of death to the Kerala king, Bhaskara Ravivarman. Bhaskara Ravivarman was killed in a battle, and Kerala territory was annexed to the Chola Empire, and to commemorate that victory, he erected the first gopura, that the front gopura, which is a fine model, and perhaps the first ever gopura that was erected in Tamil country, because prior to that gopura, we are not having an example to show. We are having a Mahadwara, near Tiruchi, Srinivasanallur, Koranganatha temple is there, where we enter into the temple through a Mahadwara. Perhaps it might have had a superstructure, pyramidal structure, but it is not in extant now. Even to Kanchipuram, which I have mentioned, we are not having a Gopura. Or to show any example of a Gopura, we are not having a surviving example. The first example that we are having is the Keralantakan Tiruvasal, the front entrance Gopura to the Brigadishwara temple. Well, the second one through which you are entering into the main portals, that is the Rajarajan Tiruvasal. It is written there, Rajarajan Tiruvasal. The second Gopura was named as Rajarajan Tiruvasal. So that was the commemorative Gopura for having becoming king. He wanted to commemorate that event, and therefore he named that Gopura after his very coronation name as Rajarajan Tiruvasal. Well, still if you go inside, you are having a full prakara, and that prakara is not a simple wall. It is like a peristyle. In English it is called a peristyle, and in Tamil it is Suttalayam. A compound wall is there, and there is a corridor or passage for walking all around, and there are sub-shrines for all the 64 Parivara Devatas. So that was the, that Suttalayam was constructed by his own general, Krishnan Raman. It is written on two entrance ways, on the western and on the northern side.